I had been with Quant Technologies for 3 years, watching algorithms dance through market data like I was conducting an invisible orchestra. My corner cubicle on the 42nd floor overlooked the Chicago River, and on clear mornings, I could see the sun painting gold streaks across the water while joggers traced perfect lines along the riverwalk below. That Tuesday morning started like any other, Earl Grey tea steaming in my Northwestern University mug, 3 monitors displaying cascading numbers that told stories only a few of us could read. Then the email arrived at 9:47 a.m. Grace, we're moving forward with the strategy session without your input this time. Thanks for understanding. Michael Torres, our Chief Technology Officer. The man who'd hired me straight out of MIT, who'd once called my analytical approach refreshingly methodical. I stared at that email for what felt like hours, though my screensaver, a slowly rotating 3D visualization of market correlations I'd coded myself, told me it was only 7 minutes. The strategy session was happening right above me on the 43rd floor, in the glass-walled conference room we called the fishbowl. I could hear the muffled voices through the ceiling tiles, the occasional burst of laughter, the scraping of ergonomic chairs against polished concrete floors. 23 people up there, every senior analyst, every team lead, every rising star, plotting the future of our quantitative trading division. And I was sitting in my Herman Miller chair, clicking refresh on my inbox like it might magically produce an invitation that would never come. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 weeks earlier, I'd presented a preliminary analysis suggesting significant volatility in emerging markets. Too conservative, Michael had said, not bothering to look up from his tablet. We need bolder thinking, Grace. The kind that moves needles, not just measures them. When Michael finally came down at 4:47 p.m., I remember because I was pretending to be deeply absorbed in recalibrating our risk assessment parameters for the 3rd time that day, his footsteps echoed with the confidence of someone who'd just made important decisions. He wore his usual uniform, charcoal Armani suit, silver tie that caught the afternoon light, Italian leather shoes that clicked against the polished floor like a metronome. Grace, got a minute? I turned from my wall of monitors, keeping my expression neutral. Behind him, I could see Tyler Morrison and James Bradley from the derivatives team, both still carrying the smugness of inclusion like visible accessories. Of course. Look, about the session today. He ran his hand through his graying hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was about to deliver news he didn't want to give. Your ideas are always too safe. We need more aggressive strategies, more risk tolerance. The team felt your approach might hold us back during brainstorming. The words hit me like glass shattering in slow motion. Too safe. In the high-stakes world of quantitative finance, where fortunes evaporated in microseconds and careers ended with a single miscalculation, safe wasn't just criticism, it was professional assassination. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't have things to say, God knows I had plenty, but because something in his tone told me this conversation was already over before it began. In the reflection of my darkened monitor, I could see Tyler Morrison fighting back a smirk. We're entering a volatile market phase, Michael continued, mistaking my silence for acceptance. The Fed signals are mixed, cryptocurrency markets are fluctuating wildly, and geopolitical tensions are creating opportunities for those brave enough to seize them. Sometimes you have to bet big to win big. Your models are solid, don't get me wrong, but they're conservative. Conservative. The word echoed in the space between us like an accusation. Around the trading floor, conversations continued, phone calls about municipal bonds, heated discussions about algorithmic trading speeds, the constant white noise of financial ambition. But in our little bubble of disappointment, silence reigned. I understand, I heard myself saying, though I understood nothing except that I'd somehow become invisible in my own department, a ghost haunting cubicles where I'd once been indispensable. That night, I sat in my Lincoln Park apartment, a converted loft with exposed brick walls and windows that framed the city like artwork, nursing a glass of Pinot Grigio and staring at my personal laptop screen. My apartment was my sanctuary, minimal furniture, maximum technology. 3 additional monitors mounted on articulating arms, a custom-built trading station that could process data faster than most hedge fund operations, and walls covered with whiteboards where I sketched market theories like a mathematician proving theorems. The market data scrolled past like digital rain, patterns within patterns, secrets hiding in plain sight. I'd always seen things others missed, subtle correlations between commodity futures and currency fluctuations, hidden relationships between social media sentiment and stock volatility, opportunities disguised as statistical noise. The next morning brought autumn's first real chill, and with it, a strange kind of clarity. I arrived at 6:30 a.m., 30 minutes before even the most dedicated analysts. The 42nd floor was tomb quiet, emergency lighting casting long shadows across empty cubicles. In this pre-dawn stillness, I could think without interruption, work without performance, create without judgment. The coffee maker gurgled to life as I settled at my desk. Through my window, Chicago was waking up, delivery trucks navigating Lower Wacker, early commuters streaming from Union Station, the city's daily resurrection beginning in real time. But my attention was captured by something else, anomalous patterns in overnight Asian market data that everyone else would dismiss as routine volatility. For the next 20 days, I became a phantom in my own workplace. I attended meetings where my suggestions were politely acknowledged and promptly forgotten. I submitted reports that disappeared into shared drives like messages in bottles thrown into a digital ocean. I watched Tyler Morrison present innovative strategies that were essentially sophisticated versions of gambling, while Rebecca Chan from Risk Management nodded approvingly at analysis that missed fundamental correlations a first-year statistics student should have caught. But every morning, every evening, every stolen moment between assigned tasks, I worked on something else. Something that grew from intellectual curiosity into obsession, from theory into revolution. The model started small. What if I built an algorithm that wasn't safe? What if I incorporated the volatility indicators everyone else was ignoring? What if I trusted the patterns I was seeing in emerging markets, the ones that made my conservative instinct scream warnings but whispered possibilities to the part of my brain that lived for mathematical poetry? I began by analyzing the psychological patterns of market behavior. Not just price movements, but the emotions that drove them. Fear manifested in specific ways, rapid sell-offs followed by dead cat bounces. Greed created predictable bubbles with mathematical precision. Overconfidence generated exploitable inefficiencies that lasted exactly long enough for algorithms to capitalize. Day 3, I integrated sentiment analysis from social media platforms, parsing millions of posts for emotional indicators that preceded market movements by hours, sometimes days. Day 7, I added geopolitical risk assessment, teaching the algorithm to recognize how international tensions translated into currency fluctuations and commodity price spikes. Day 10, I incorporated something no one else was tracking: corporate executive travel patterns. When CEOs suddenly change flight plans, markets often follow. When board members start selling stock options, the smart money pays attention. The model grew like a living organism, fed on data streams that most analysts never considered. Day 12, I caught Tyler Morrison looking over my shoulder as I refined the algorithm's machine learning parameters. He was wearing that cologne that smelled like expensive mistakes, standing close enough that I could hear him breathing. "Working on something interesting?" he asked, that casual tone people use when they're fishing for information they plan to steal. "Just exploring some ideas," I replied, minimizing my screen with practiced nonchalance. "You know how it is, always tinkering." He lingered for another moment, probably hoping I'd elaborate. When I didn't, he drifted away, but I caught him glancing back twice before disappearing into the elevator bank. Day 15, Rebecca Chan from Risk Management stopped by my desk during the afternoon lull when most people were grabbing coffee or pretending to read market reports while actually checking social media. "Grace, I've been running some preliminary analysis on market conditions," she said, settling into the guest chair beside my desk, the one I'd bought with my own money because the company-issued furniture was designed for meetings that lasted exactly 15 minutes. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing in the volatility patterns?" I was seeing it. I'd been seeing it for weeks, feeding it into my model, watching it evolve from anomaly into opportunity. "What exactly are you looking at?" "This convergence in the energy sector, combined with the currency fluctuations coming out of emerging markets." She pulled up her own charts on her tablet, fingers swiping through data with the unconscious grace of someone who'd spent 15 years reading financial tea leaves. "It looks like a setup for either massive gains or catastrophic losses. No middle ground." Exactly what my model was designed for: situations where traditional risk assessment failed because the traditional rules no longer applied. "Interesting theory. I keep running the numbers, and they don't make sense using conventional models," she continued, leaning forward with the intensity of someone who'd found a puzzle worth solving. "It's like the market is speaking a language we haven't learned yet." I had learned it. Over 20 sleepless nights, through thousands of lines of code and millions of data points, I'd taught my algorithm to speak fluent chaos. Day 18, the market hiccuped. Nothing dramatic, a 3% drop in tech stocks that recovered by close, but enough to make everyone nervous. I watched from my desk as Michael held emergency meetings in the fishbowl, his confidence from 3 weeks ago replaced by furrowed brows and hurried conversations with people whose salaries reflected their supposed ability to predict exactly these kinds of movements. My model had predicted this exact movement. Down to the percentage point, down to the hour of recovery. The 20th day arrived like the final act of a play I'd been writing in secret. I arrived at 6:15 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than usual, carrying the weight of 3 weeks' worth of sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled revelations. The trading floor wouldn't come alive for another hour, but I needed this time, needed the silence to make final calibrations, to ensure every parameter was perfect. The morning started normally enough. Colleagues trickling in with their Starbucks and their small talk about weekend plans. Tyler Morrison arriving at 8:45 with his usual swagger, tie already loosened like he'd been working hard since dawn instead of hitting the gym. Rebecca Chan settling into her corner office with the kind of focused intensity that meant she'd spotted something important in the overnight data. By 10 a.m., the floor was humming with its usual energy. Phone calls to clients in London and Hong Kong, rapid-fire conversations about interest rate speculation, the constant background noise of ambition and anxiety mixing in equal measure. Then, at 10:47 a.m., everything changed. The energy sector exploded upward, not gradually, not predictably, but with the kind of violent momentum that separated professionals from pretenders. Oil futures jumped 7% in 4 minutes. Natural gas spiked 12%. Renewable energy stocks moved in perfect inverse correlation, creating arbitrage opportunities that lasted exactly long enough for those prepared to act. My model had predicted all of it. More than predicted, it had identified the exact sequence of events, the precise timing, the specific securities that would move and in which direction. I was calibrating the final parameters when the shouting started. It came from Michael's office, loud enough to cut through the general hum of the trading floor, sharp enough to make everyone stop mid-conversation. "What the hell is happening out there?" His voice carried the edge of panic that money managers develop when markets move in ways their models can't explain. Then footsteps, not his usual measured pace, but the urgent rhythm of someone trying to outrun a crisis that was already 3 steps ahead. "Grace! Grace, where the hell is Grace?" Every head on the floor turned in perfect synchronization, like a choreographed performance of surprise. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Phone calls ended abruptly. Even the constantly ringing landlines seemed to pause out of respect for whatever was about to unfold. I looked up from my screen to see Michael Torres bursting through the maze of cubicles like a man possessed, his face flushed, his usually perfect tie askew, his silver hair disheveled in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it for the past hour. Behind him trailed Tyler Morrison and Rebecca Chan, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, Tyler pale and confused, Rebecca wearing the expression of someone who'd just watched her assumptions explode in real time. "Here," I said simply, not standing, not moving toward him, just watching as he approached my desk like a man trying to outrun his own mistakes. "Who built this?" He was holding a stack of printouts, pages of analysis, projections, model outputs that I recognized immediately. My work, somehow obtained, somehow verified, somehow proven profitable in ways that made grown financial professionals lose their composure. This winning model, who the hell built this? The trading floor had gone completely silent. 73 people, all pretending to work while listening to every word, their attention focused on our little drama with the intensity of spectators watching a championship match. "I built it," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "Over the past 20 days. His expression shifted through confusion, realization, and something that might have been shame, or possibly terror at the implications of what he'd just discovered. "This model." He shuffled through the papers with shaking hands. "It predicted the energy sector surge down to the minute. It identified the cryptocurrency arbitrage opportunity that our competitors missed completely. It flagged the currency hedge position that saved us $12 million this morning alone. $12 million. The number hung in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar, visible and intoxicating and impossible to ignore. "Your ideas are always too safe," I repeated his words back to him, letting them settle in the silence like snow falling on a cemetery. "Remember?" Now came the moment I'd been building toward, the crescendo of 20 days of invisible work and 3 weeks of professional exile. "Grace." Michael's voice had lost all its executive authority, replaced by something that sounded almost human. This is extraordinary work. The computational complexity alone. When did you? Every morning before anyone arrived. Every evening after everyone left. During lunch breaks that turned into working sessions. Between meetings where my input wasn't wanted. While you were having strategy sessions about how my ideas weren't aggressive enough. I finally stood, not to tower over him, but to claim my space in a conversation that was 3 weeks overdue. I built a model that turns conventional risk assessment upside down. It finds opportunity in volatility, stability in chaos, profit in patterns that everyone else dismisses as noise. Rebecca stepped forward, her tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. Grace, the computational requirements for this kind of analysis, you'd need processing power that I built myself, I interrupted. In my apartment. 3 custom servers running algorithms I designed from scratch, processing data streams that most hedge funds can't access. 24/7 analysis of market sentiment, geopolitical indicators, executive behavior patterns, social media emotional fluctuations, and about 40 other variables that traditional models ignore because they're too complex to quantify. Tyler Morrison, who'd spent those same 3 weeks presenting innovative strategies that amounted to dressed-up gambling with other people's money, looked like he wanted to disappear into the polished concrete floor. Why didn't you tell us? Michael asked, and for the first time in 20 days, he sounded like the mentor who'd hired me, not the executive who'd dismissed me. Why didn't you share this during development? This was the question I'd been waiting for, the one that would define everything that came after. Because you didn't ask. I gestured toward the printouts in his hands, pages that represented weeks of work done in secret, solutions built in exile. You told me my ideas were too safe, then ignored me for 3 weeks. You excluded me from strategy sessions, dismissed my analysis, and made it clear that my approach wasn't welcome. But you never asked what I was working on. You never wondered if maybe, just maybe, being underestimated might be the greatest advantage a quantitative analyst could have. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of missed opportunities and misplaced assumptions, heavy with the kind of regret that successful people rarely have to confront. The model works because it accounts for human psychology, I continued, warming to the theme I'd been developing in solitude for weeks. It predicts not just market movements, but the emotions that drive them. Fear, greed, overconfidence, dismissal, all the cognitive biases that make people overlook the quiet analyst in the corner who's been building tomorrow while everyone else argues about yesterday. Around us, the trading floor had become a theater. Colleagues pretended to review reports while hanging on every word. Phones rang unanswered. Computer screens displayed ignored data while their operators focused on live drama unfolding in Cubicle 42. Michael looked at the papers again, then at me, then at the trading floor full of people who were no longer pretending not to listen. His face cycled through emotions like a machine learning algorithm processing unexpected input, surprise, embarrassment, calculation, and finally, something that looked like respect. Grace, I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. He set the printout on my desk with the reverence usually reserved for signed contracts worth 8 figures. And we owe you a promotion. Senior quantitative strategist, effective immediately. Your own team, your own budget, complete autonomy over model development, and equity participation in any profits generated by your algorithms. The trading floor erupted in applause, not polite corporate clapping, but genuine appreciation from colleagues who understood what they'd just witnessed. Rebecca Chan was grinning like she'd just watched her favorite underdog win the World Series. Even Tyler Morrison managed a respectful nod, though it looked like it physically pained him. But the moment I'll remember most wasn't the applause or the promotion or the vindication. It was the look in Michael's eyes, recognition, finally, of something that had been there all along, waiting patiently for someone to notice. 2 months later, my model generated $47 million in profits during a market downturn that devastated our competitors and sent 3 hedge funds into bankruptcy. The algorithm I'd built in secret became the foundation for Quant Technologies' most successful trading strategy. We licensed variations to other firms, generated consulting revenue from financial institutions worldwide, and attracted investment capital that valued our company at twice its previous worth. I still arrive early some mornings, not because I have to, but because I love those quiet moments when the data speaks without interruption. My corner office now has an unobstructed view of Lake Michigan, and on clear days, I can see sailboats navigating the wind patterns like tiny algorithmic traders finding opportunity in turbulence. The story could end there, with triumph, vindication, the quiet analyst finally getting her due. But the real lesson isn't about proving others wrong or even about the power of persistence. It's about something more fundamental, the dangerous assumption that visibility equals value, that volume equals vision, that consensus equals correctness. Sometimes the most revolutionary ideas come not from the loudest voices in the room, but from the person quietly building solutions while others debate problems. My team now includes 12 analysts, 3 data scientists, and 2 former competitors who specifically requested transfers to work on my projects. We've developed models that predict market movements with unprecedented accuracy, not because we're smarter than everyone else, but because we're willing to look where others won't, to trust patterns that contradict conventional wisdom, to find signal in what others dismiss as noise. They sidelined me because they thought safe meant weak, conservative meant timid, quiet meant irrelevant. They learned that safe, when executed with precision and hidden creativity, becomes unstoppable. They discovered that the greatest risk isn't in taking chances, it's in underestimating the person everyone assumes has nothing left to prove. And sometimes, being underestimated is the most powerful position of all. The real revolution wasn't in the algorithm I built or the profits it generated. It was in the reminder that innovation often comes from the margins, that breakthroughs happen in silence, and that the future is usually being built by someone you've forgotten to notice. In a world obsessed with performance and presence, with visibility and volume, there's still space for the quiet revolutionaries, the ones who change everything while everyone else is looking the other way.